In 2003, General Wesley Clark, former NATO Supreme Allied Commander, revealed a startling conversation with a high-ranking Pentagon official in the aftermath of 9/11. The official spoke of a plan to invade 7 countries in 5 years: Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and Iran. This revelation sent shockwaves through the international community, raising profound questions about America's post-9/11 foreign policy objectives. Was the invasion of Iraq merely the opening salvo in a much larger campaign for regional dominance? The implications were significant, particularly for a volatile and strategically vital region already grappling with instability. While the Bush administration publicly justified the invasion of Iraq on the grounds of weapons of mass destruction and alleged ties to al-Qaeda, Clark's revelation suggested a broader agenda. The 7 countries listed represented a mix of perceived threats and strategic opportunities. Iraq, with its oil reserves and history of regional ambition, was a primary target. Syria and Iran, both considered state sponsors of terrorism by the US, were also in the crosshairs. Lebanon, with its significant Hezbollah presence, was seen as an extension of Iranian influence. Somalia and Sudan, plagued by internal conflict and weak governance, were viewed as potential havens for terrorist organizations. The inclusion of Iran in this alleged strategy is particularly noteworthy. As a major regional power with significant oil and gas reserves, a large population, and a history of anti-American sentiment, Iran represented a different order of challenge compared to the other countries on the list. An invasion of Iran would have required a massive military commitment and carried immense risks, potentially destabilizing the entire region and sparking a wider conflict. The fact that it was even considered speaks volumes about the prevailing mindset within certain circles of the Bush administration in the aftermath of 9/11. The alleged plan, if true, reflected a desire to reshape the geopolitical landscape of the Middle East in the wake of 9/11. The invasion of Iraq, in this context, can be seen as the first step in a domino theory of regime change, intended to create a new regional order more favorable to American interests. While the full scope of this strategy remains a subject of debate, its implications continue to reverberate throughout the region and beyond. The legacy of this period continues to shape international relations, influence public opinion, and fuel anti-American sentiment in many parts of the world. Iran's inclusion in this purported plan highlights its geopolitical significance and the perceived threat it posed to American interests. As a major regional power with vast energy reserves and a history of revolutionary fervor, Iran has long been a focal point of U.S. foreign policy in the Middle East. The 1979 Islamic Revolution, which overthrew the US-backed Shah and established an Islamic Republic openly hostile to American influence, marked a turning point in relations between the two countries. The hostage crisis of 1979 to 1981, in which Iranian students stormed the US embassy in Tehran and held 52 American diplomats hostage for 444 days, further solidified the image of Iran as an implacable enemy in the American psyche. Subsequent events, such as Iran's support for Hezbollah in Lebanon and its nuclear program, only served to reinforce this perception. From a strategic perspective, Iran occupied a critical position in the Middle East. It bordered Iraq, a key target of the Bush administration, and had the potential to influence events in Afghanistan, where the US was bogged down in a growing insurgency. Iran also exerted considerable influence in the Persian Gulf, through which a significant portion of the world's oil supply flowed. Controlling Iran, or at least neutralizing its influence, would have given the US a dominant position in the region and allowed it to project power more effectively throughout the Middle East and Central Asia. Moreover, Iran's revolutionary ideology and its support for groups deemed terrorist by the US made it a prime candidate for regime change in the eyes of neoconservative thinkers who held sway in the Bush administration. These hawks saw the promotion of democracy, or at least pro-Western regimes, in the Middle East as a key component of the war on terror. They believed that a democratic Iran would not only cease to be a threat to the US, but would also serve as a model for other countries in the region, undermining support for radical Islam. The potential consequences of implementing the alleged 7-country strategy, particularly the invasion of Iran, would have been far-reaching and profoundly destabilizing. On a global scale, such a move would have been met with widespread condemnation and outrage, further isolating the US and fueling anti-American sentiment. The invasion of Iraq, already highly controversial, had significantly damaged America's reputation and credibility on the world stage. A military strike against Iran, a sovereign nation that posed no imminent threat to the US, would have been viewed as an act of aggression and a violation of international law. It would have likely galvanized opposition to American foreign policy, leading to protests, boycotts, and potentially even violence directed at US interests around the world. Domestically, the invasion of Iran would have also faced significant opposition. While the Bush administration enjoyed a surge in popularity after 9/11, public support for the war on terror was waning by the mid-2000s. The protracted and costly occupation of Iraq, coupled with mounting casualties and a lack of clear progress, had eroded public confidence in the Bush administration's handling of foreign policy. A full-scale invasion of Iran, a country far larger and more powerful than Iraq, would have required a massive commitment of American troops and resources at a time when the US military was already stretched thin. The economic costs of such an endeavor would have been astronomical, further straining the US economy and potentially leading to cuts in social programs. Faced with these realities, it is highly unlikely that the American public would have supported a war with Iran. Section 4. The Shifting Sands of Power. The potential consequences of the alleged seven-country strategy extend beyond the immediate aftermath of military intervention. The invasion and occupation of Iraq, while not directly targeting Iran, had a profound impact on the regional balance of power, inadvertently strengthening Iran's position in the Middle East. The removal of Saddam Hussein, a longtime adversary of Iran, eliminated a major obstacle to Iranian influence in the region. The subsequent power vacuum in Iraq allowed Iranian-backed Shia militias and political parties to gain a foothold in the country, increasing Tehran's influence in Iraqi politics and society. Furthermore, the destabilization of Iraq and the rise of sectarian violence in the aftermath of the US invasion created opportunities for Iran to expand its influence among disaffected populations across the region. The US invasion of Iraq, while intended to weaken Iran, inadvertently strengthened its position and paved the way for its emergence as a dominant regional player. This unintended consequence highlights the complexities and unpredictable nature of military intervention in the Middle East, where even well-intentioned actions can have unforeseen and often counterproductive results. Section 5. Echoes of Interventionism. While the full scope of the alleged seven-country strategy remains a subject of debate, its echoes can be seen in subsequent US foreign policy decisions in the Middle East and North Africa. The 2011 intervention in Libya, which led to the overthrow of Muammar Gaddafi, bears striking similarities to the earlier invasion of Iraq. Both interventions were justified on humanitarian grounds, with proponents arguing that military action was necessary to prevent a humanitarian catastrophe. However, both interventions also resulted in regime change, chaos, and instability, creating power vacuums that allowed extremist groups to flourish. The rise of ISIS in the aftermath of the Libyan intervention, for example, can be partly attributed to the collapse of state institutions and the proliferation of weapons following the fall of Gaddafi. These interventions, whether driven by a grand strategy or ad hoc responses to perceived crises, highlight the dangers of military interventionism and the unintended consequences that often accompany such actions. They also underscore the importance of diplomacy, multilateralism, and a nuanced understanding of local dynamics in addressing complex foreign policy challenges. Section 6. A World Transformed. The world today stands as a testament to the profound and lasting impact of the events that unfolded in the aftermath of 9/11. The war on terror, with its emphasis on military intervention and regime change, has had a transformative effect on international relations, reshaping alliances, fueling global terrorism, and eroding international law. The Middle East in particular has been profoundly affected by this period of turmoil, with ongoing conflicts, humanitarian crises, and political instability plaguing the region. The legacy of the alleged seven-country strategy, whether fully implemented or not, serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked militarism and the importance of a foreign policy grounded in diplomacy, respect for international law, and a nuanced understanding of the complexities of the 21st century world. As the US navigates an increasingly multipolar world, it is imperative that it learns from the mistakes of the past and embraces a more restrained, multilateral approach to foreign policy. The world has paid a heavy price for the pursuit of military solutions to complex political problems. The time has come for a new approach, one that prioritizes dialogue, cooperation, and the peaceful resolution of disputes. Only then can we hope to build a more just, equitable, and peaceful world for all.